Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-hosts Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? This is the Coaching 101 podcast. I am Daniel Chamberlain. That is Kenny Simpson. Kenny is looking super fly with the hat on backwards today.
I'm trying to be young. I don't have a lot of opportunities left to be young. I played with a bunch of young kids in flag football, and they're young and super athletic, and I just threw the ball to hopefully where they would go catch it.
There you
and
go.
So it made me feel young, but I look around and went, there's at least 10 former players playing, 10 former guys that I coached. And then I'm looking, okay, my daughter is there and I'm playing on the same team with her boyfriend. So, down the road, who knows where this could go? They've been dating for a long time. But I basically could be, playing with, if I go long enough, it could be a grandkid out there. So I'm getting to that age where you better enjoy it. And I kind of just said, screw it. I don't care what people think. If I can move and I'm not going to hurt our team, I'm going to play. So it's been fun.
My wife will tell you, Dr. Samantha Chamberlain, the physical therapist, will tell you that movement is medicine. And if you quit moving, you die. So I would say I highly recommend you just stay after it. That sounds like the way to be.
Well, right now my back would not agree with your wife, but my mind agrees with her. So we're going to hopefully keep that moving.
There you go. We are joined tonight by Coach Shawn Cooley out of Tennessee. Coach, I'm going to let you do your own introduction here. I'll screw it up. So the floor is yours, good sir. Tell us about yourself, where you're from, what you're doing.
Sure. All right. First thing, appreciate you guys having me on. So my name's Shawn Cooley. I'm the associate head coach and offensive coordinator at Hickson High School in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Just kind of started my career in my alma mater at Sequatchie County. Spent a few years there. Got my first coordinator job in the state of Georgia. So I spent some time in Georgia at Lafayette High School. Had a family emergency kind of thing. Kind of had to move closer back to home in Tennessee, and have been at Hickson ever since. So that's my full speech. That's my 30 seconds. That's all I'm giving you right there.
I love it, man. Well, that's good. We're talking a little bit ahead of time about, transfer portals hitting Tennessee and all that stuff for your high school kids. We've been dealing with it. So it sounds like you guys are right on par with the rest of us.
Oh, yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, Coach, man, we're glad to have you on tonight. We're going to talk a little bit of extra surface formations and players and personnel groupings and just kind of what guys are trying to do. I know Kenny is, at least in my region, he has made famous this tight end wing set with twin set away and forcing guys to pick what they're going to try to defend or take away. And so we're just kind of going to talk through really what we're trying to do when we get into these, tight end wing sets, or even just two tight, or just with a single tight end, right? These guys are using these formations and these personnel groupings for all sorts of things. So we'll kind of run through some of what we're using it for. And then, kind of how you can use that in your own playbook. So should be a pretty good episode. Hopefully you guys can take something out of it. Is I know it's off season, so we're all adding too much into our playbook right now, right? Everybody's building, going to clinics, listening to podcasts. So I figured this is one of those things you can put in. And when you start cutting, hopefully you're cutting like plays and not formation. So that's something you can mold into your offensive grouping or your offensive playbook and keep. Before we get going, Kenny, why don't you tell us how we can simplify football for our players and our staff? What's up, coaches? I want to talk to you for just a few moments about your program. The longer I'm in this profession, the more I understand that efficiency is truly the name of the game. We're talking offense, defense, doesn't matter, right? Eventually, you're going to come down to checking out your efficiency. So I have to ask you, are you doing everything in your program the most efficient way, right? Are you fundraising the most efficient way? Are you representing your players and your program to the public in the best way? Are you planning to build the facilities the most efficient way? If you answered no to any of those, or really even if you answered yes to all of them, and you haven't contacted Mark Bridges at Ace Sports, you're missing a key step. So look, Mark and his team, they are the go-to group for video board and scoreboard installations for your school. They're not just football either. Mark can help you mock up your newest video board for that new stadium, or maybe even your old stadium, right? That's where Mark and the guys come in. And we're not just buying a flashy thing, right? Yes, it's nice. It's pretty neat to have that big scoreboard, that big video board, but you're also, you're investing back into that program. You're investing into that newest fundraiser. Sure, you can keep selling your discount cards, your beef jerky, hosting pie auctions, whatever it is that you like to do. But let's just be honest with ourselves, guys. We're not making enough money for those big ticket items. For the big ticket items like turf, an indoor facility, that's where you need a big ticket item fundraiser. That's what Ace Sports is offering you today. Guys, I've talked to Mark several times now, right? And it always comes down to big school, small school. Right? Well, of course, the big schools can afford that new video board, but the small schools really can't. It's just not true anymore, man. Your school isn't too small, and I promise. Okay, 1A, 2A schools, it doesn't matter. Mark and the guys, they're helping them out. Contact Mark today at mark.bridges@acesports.com and let him come give you a quote. Let him show you and your administration the plan. Now, really, it's the cheat code, right? Let him show you the cheat code that is fundraising with Ace Sports video boards. Tell him Daniel sent you. This episode is brought to you by Athletic Speed and Movement. At athleticspeedmovement.com, we've taken Del Basquet's 45 years of speed and movement training and put it all in one place just for you. You can get the same training that NFL players have been getting for years, collegiate players have been getting for years, and now high schools across the nation are paying thousands of dollars to bring Dell in to install his system, but we've got it online for you. It's time to help your team become faster, not just in the 40, not just their sprint speed, but between the tackles and their cuts while they're chasing down the quarterback. It's time for you to help them become faster everywhere. Jump over to athleticspeedmovement.com. There's an orange button there. Just click it. It says, get the keys to playing faster. You'll get the 3 core movement video from Dell. He's explaining the science behind it, all for just the price of your email. Check it out, athleticspeedmovement.com.
Coaching 101 podcast is sponsored by Findaway Productions. Findaway Productions also sponsors fbcoachsimpson.com for all your coaching needs, with over 30 coaching materials, books, as well as 50 PowerPoints and videos and smaller materials and the free magazine headsets. Findaway Productions also sponsors offensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things offense, and defensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things defense.
All right, Coach, appreciate that. I forgot it again, guys. Y'all listen to the podcast. You know that I never remember the quote of the week before the break. We're supposed to do it before all those ads. If I didn't tell you that, you probably wouldn't know that, but I can admit my fault. So, Kenny, why don't you go ahead and tell us our quote of the week?
I'm smiling because, ironically, the quote of the week is about efficiency, which is kind of funny in this situation. But so efficiency is the foundation of success. Without it, all other pursuits are undermined by wasted effort. The newest Team Themes book we're going to be putting out before the season is going to have a whole section on the word efficient. Like, what does that mean as an athlete and as a coach? Thought this was a pretty good quote, but again, the idea a lot of times, and I think that's becoming a big deal as you're starting to limit time with how much you have with your kids, and younger generations figured out that they like their family and they want to go be with them. So the idea of being efficient has kind of started to become great in sports, which I think is a really, really good thing. And our generation, we took pride and badges of honor by working 90-hour weeks, instead of being smarter and being more efficient. And I'm glad to see that's kind of going away.
Me too, as someone who represents this weird middle age group of coaches. I'm still young in coaching, but not necessarily as young as some of their ages are. Efficiency is definitely big for me. I like my family. I like being home on Saturdays and half the day on Sundays. So, but more than that, I think we're seeing efficiency is growing in the game and stats. We're seeing it when you're, breaking down film on Sundays or Saturday, whenever you're doing that. A lot of times guys just care about efficiency, right? It's still players, it's still what formations they run, but a lot of it's like, what do they do efficiently? What do we do efficiently? I mean, that's how we tracked our offense this year. We got to go back to the thing we're good at, and it doesn't always pop. So that's a good one, Coach. Real quick, I want to talk about the Gun Tee Clinic. We got the last 2 coming up, right? This comes out, should be the first weekend in April. Actually, it's going to be March 30th is when this one drops, or the 31st. So the last weekend in March. April, Kenny and I, we're off to Boston.
Yeah, we are. And we're going in Boston. We're going to have Chris Haddad join us. We're going to have, I think I've got another speaker as well. There's going to be 3 or 4 guest speakers. That'll be the most guest speakers you'll get at a Gun Tee Clinic, except for the National Clinic, which is all my guys. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Of course, Boston's a really cool city to go visit. And then we've got Milwaukee the next weekend, another really cool city to visit as well. I'm bringing my little one on that one, excited to kind of see him get to it, those will be the last two. So we got like 2 more gun tee clinics. That'll make 9 for the season. So far, according to registrations, looks like we'll connect with 9 clinics, over 1,000 coaches from probably upwards of 35 to 40 states. So it's been really, really cool to do it. If you haven't jumped in yet, you still have a chance.
Yeah, that's really neat. I'm excited to get in and kind of give back. I mean, obviously working with you, I've taken a ton of the gun tee system and just your knowledge and your culture and all that. I've taken it and learned a bunch. So I'm excited to give back to the clinic and just see what all that's about. So Boston, then Milwaukee, back-to-back weekends should be a great time. If you guys haven't signed up, get over there and do that today. Last thing we'll mention here is the special teams. Remind me what the book is.
Well, I've got the book, so Special Teams Workbook is out. So that's been out for a bit. You can go to my website and get it if you want it. We are working really hard. This is coming out in March. So probably the next month, you'll hear about the Special Teams Academy, which is going to be in the same vein as the offensive and defensive coordinator academies and the head coach academy. Basically, it's going to be bringing in some experts. I've already got several of them recorded, walking through all the parts of special teams. And then it comes with the digital book. So you get all that for like one price. And actually something you can use to run your special teams. So that's coming out the next, hopefully the next month.
Awesome. I'm excited to get into that one too. The academies are all good. If you guys aren't, jump into those Facebook groups, all the ones that Kenny has out there. You can learn a ton from other coaches. Lots of great questions in there. Sometimes it's just questions that make you think and make you answer them in your own terminology or with your own, what does your system contain? So that's a really great way to kind of think about football and just get random questions. Let's jump into it, guys. Coach Cooley, we're going to start with you, man, guest of the show. So you get to start us off. We start talking about these extra surfaces, extra man, formations. Kind of what does that make you think of, or what are we talking about when we talk about extra surface?
So for us, we base out of 11 personnel kind of everywhere I've been, but definitely have some 12 personnel looks and even some 13. For me, extra man surface would be someone besides guard and tackle on one side of the center. So you've got tight end, so hand down Y, maybe a H-back, maybe a wing, whatever that you deem that. And sometimes two, like how Kenny runs his tight end wing stuff. So for us, it's trying to find numbers, really primarily in the run game, trying to exploit numbers, find numbers, either strong or weak side. I have no issues running something weak. I like it a lot. So trying to find numbers. Another thing is to exploit a weakness on the defense, right? So you put in a corner in a position to make a tackle. Anytime you can do that, I feel like that's a good play. We usually don't even block them. Just to be honest with you, we'll crack down, and if they're not very good tacklers, we're not going to block them because we're wasting guys out there. But in the run game, definitely trying to find numbers there, and even you can do it in the pass game as well. How Kenny does his tight end wing one side, and you got your twins the other side. They got to pick a side, right? They got to pick a side that they're gonna play solid defense to. So for me, it's just about really finding numbers and exploiting a weakness on the defense.
Perfect. I love it. Coach Simpson, what do you got to add to that?
Daniel, I think I lost you there, man. You still on here?
I am. Hopefully you can see me. No? Can you hear me at least? How about now? All right.
Gotcha.
Okay. Same question. When you're talking extra surface, what does that mean to you? How do you let your, what formations you call and things like that?
I mean, Coach, I thought did a really good job explaining. I mean, basically, it's anything you're putting outside of a tackle. So if you have a guard and a tackle, whatever else you're putting out there, is extra. And so that could be as simple as a tight end, like he mentioned. You could put 2 tight ends. You could put, a wing back. You could put your running back up there as a wing. The other thing I wrote down was I think you could even just do it out of 10 personnel and just condense your receivers. You watch the Dolphins play NFL. You watch 49ers play. A lot of these teams are using receivers, and they're messing with their splits. Well, they're not really, a normal receiver split. They're kind of condensed down. And to me, you're creating another bubble, to run the ball to. You're kind of making the split, and that gives a unique problem because it's not a tight end wing. For the Dolphins, that's Tyreek Hill. Like, how are you going to handle that? You got to cover that guy, and he could block now because he's in a good angle to block. So it doesn't always have to be tight ends and wings. Obviously, that's what we do. We kind of make our living on that world because that's the other problem you create with that for me is when I give you a tight end wing on one side and a normal split on the other with our receivers, by definition, we're unbalanced. Like, we are unbalanced. We are spread to one side, and we're tight end wing or double wing, whatever you want to call it, wing T, whatever you want to say, we're that on one side. We are unbalanced. So we force you as a defense to make some hard decisions. Are you going to try to match that personnel and become unbalanced with us? Or are you going to try to stay in your base and what you run? And that's other issues. And I even put down, you can go far enough. We get far enough in this world where we'll put tackle over, so we'll go guard, tackle, and have our tight end back on the nub side. So that creates a whole new set of problems because now you have a nub tight end who's eligible and you have a tackle over. So now what are you going to do as a defense? And so I think that's the reason a lot of people, whether they run my offense or really any offense, you're starting to see this type of stuff show up at every level. Like I mentioned, the Dolphins, you got condensed sets. Colleges are running a whole bunch of unbalanced, put the tight end on the backside. You're starting to see that because it's a problem at every level because it creates lots of issues the defense has to think through. And there's lots of ways you can get into it, with different personnel groupings. And then it really kind of makes it tough.
Yeah, those are all really good points. We start looking at personnel groupings, this 21 or 12. Depends on what you call an H-back, right? That's always I always call them a tight end, so they go in the tight end number for me. A lot of guys say they're still a running back. We're going to flip him the ball and let him run some. I guess I could call him a wide receiver. I don't know, right? But, just getting out in these heavier personnel groupings. Kenny, you hit it perfect there with the tackle over. We played around last year with tackle over away from tight end wing. So we rebuild this essentially a too tight look. You got a three-man surface to both sides. But your kids don't necessarily know what they're seeing. They don't understand that that's two eligible receivers in front of them, not a tackle and a tight end, right? And we've hidden that tackle on the far side. So lots of fun stuff can be done when you start moving big boys around. As long as you can keep simple block rules so they don't screw it up, you can do a lot there and really stress out a defense. I think we do have to just talk about too tight as well. You just put a tight on ace set, as a lot of people are going to call that, right? Or whatever it is in your terminology. That's one that people struggle with. When I've got if you got a 4 front, how are you answering to it? Are you going to bring a linebacker down? If you're in a 3 front, I'm pulling both your outside backers down. Now, who's your force guy, right? I just took him from a spill to force to almost like he's having to box it. So I'm making your kids play a technique they may not be used to. And when he gets a down block right in front of him, what is he doing? Because he may or may not know how to. He's not a defensive lineman, but I've made him one, right, by rule. So, we've seen DC struggle completely with ace, so we just run it all game. There's a lot can be done with these 3 and 4 man services to different sides. And you get into your bunch sets with wide receivers, you can really go crazy. I mean, you can honestly, you talk about putting the game into a phone booth. That's all there. So, great stuff there. So what are we trying to accomplish? And Kitty, we're going to go back to you first here. What really are we trying to accomplish? So you've made it famous. Tight end wing one side, twins away. And you kind of talked about making the defense pick, but what are you looking at in a defense? What is your plan when you call that formation?
Yeah, I mean, for us, again, like I mentioned, you're playing unbalanced, like because you have tight end wing and you got twins. We're going to force you to make that hard choice, and I think it can't be undersold. Now, some guys play in this world. Like we will run some, they call it, 21 personnel or 12 personnel. And they play in this world. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like there's nothing at all wrong with doing whatever you want to do. I mean, it's football. But when you're going to run a tight end wing, 90% of the time, you are now, you're forcing the hand of the defense of how in the world are we going to handle this? Are we going to take out a corner and bring in a linebacker, or take out a linebacker and bring in a D lineman to try to match these guys, or are we going to try to stay within our normal, whatever your normal defense structure is? And that's what I'm looking for. We come out of the game, that's all I want to know. Like, am I getting some kind of, strange looking defense these guys tried to stick in on Monday, and they're hoping with 3 days of practice they can be ready to run it. That's tough. That usually doesn't work real well. Or are they playing base and I can dictate, okay, we're going to figure out ways to condense guys down to make your corner come into the box and tackle us, or to make somebody who's uncomfortable, have to do something they don't really like to do. And so that's one of the major things we're looking for with it, is to force them to become unbalanced. Also, the coach mentioned already, you're generally going to gain numbers somewhere. Like, you start adding an A gap and a B gap and a C gap and a D gap, it's hard to fit that. Usually a DB's got to fit somewhere, or, and all I'm looking for as a play caller is, are you loading up all the gaps? We're going to run buck or pin and pull or something on the edge. And if you're not loading up all the gaps, we're going to run an inside run play. I mean, it's not real difficult. You just kind of figure out what they're doing. I think you don't have to do it with a tight end wing. I mean, you could go condensed receivers, and then all I'm looking at is your force player. Like, right. Is he going to play inside of it, or is he going to play outside of it? If he's playing inside, we're going to pin him down, and we're on the edge. If he's going to play outside of it, you created a lot of room right there. And again, is he a run player, or is he a pass player? I mean, you have all these different things you can create. In my opinion, is what we're trying to do, is we're trying to make that conflict guy, so a 3-4 outside linebacker or a 4-2-5 roll-up safety, whatever that guy is, where are you going to play? Or if we go tight end wing, where are you putting your defensive end? Is he head up the tight end? Is he inside the tight end? Is he outside the tight end? How are you getting your guys where they're supposed to get? So we're trying to find those type of players that I call those conflict guys. Like, they usually have a couple different things they're responsible to do. We're going to try to figure that out. Then you can also create space. I think not just, Coach mentioned it, you can create in the running game for sure. I mean, not that hard. No one's in C gap. Run there. It's not real difficult. But you can also create advantages in the passing game. Because a lot of times when I stick tight end wing or I stick tackle, whatever it is, a DB is now being asked to run an alley and fit a gap, or to play force. You cannot do both. You can't run an alley and fit the run and be responsible for a zone on the defense. Like that's you're asking a kid to do two things, and in my opinion, that makes him what we would call a conflict player. So now we're going to go after that guy. So I think that's the underrated part of condensed sets, is a lot of times you find those guys that are fitting with DBs, and the passing game opens up tremendously, whether that be RPO or whether that be play action. So that's what we're looking to do with it. I'm sure there's more you can do.
Absolutely. Coach Cooley, on to you, man. When you start calling these in, I know you said that you like to use them over in Tennessee. What's kind of your game plan? What are you thinking when you put these formations in?
So not only just to have the formation in there, like we use unbalanced a lot. We use H-back tight end, put him at wing sometimes. I feel like it's best used for us is when you were motioning, trading, doing all that kind of stuff, moving those guys around, right? So for us, if you stay stagnant in one formation, I think the more times you do that, the more the defense gets kind of comfortable with that. So I like to keep them kind of off balance a little bit, and we trade. We'll do some motions, a lot of motions. We motion a lot of different ways. But trades are really good, and I found for us, I mean, it's probably for everywhere, but you trade tight end wing, tight end H back into the boundary. That creates a big issue is playing formation in the boundary. A lot of those things we like to, we move that H back a lot. I mean, pre-snap, post, like we move him a lot of different spots. So just so there's never anybody getting very comfortable. And we're not running completely different plays. We're running the same plays. It's just different, same plays, different ways. I've heard it said that a million times. I firmly believe in that, like 100%, right? So that's kind of our, yeah. Yeah, that's. I've heard you say that actually.
Kenny's pointing to his book in the background. For all y'all that are just listening.
I probably read it out of one of them things, but I firmly believe in that, man. And I feel like you doing all that in the run game is really explosive, and it's even more explosive in the pass game. I mean, like Coach said, you get a safety. He's got to play the alley, man. You get a post right behind his head whenever he's looking down there, and it's 88 to the gate. So, I really like it a lot. I'm a big believer in being really simple with the concepts you run and moving, trading, motioning, all that good stuff. I'm a huge believer in that, especially to an unbalanced set. I think it creates a lot of problems.
Absolutely. We like to use this, and we talk a lot about space, numbers, leverage, right? That's what we're kind of getting. And I personally, as a defensive coordinator, have seen my kids not know what the heck they're even lining up to, right? We get tackle over, and we already have this extra surface, and I'll have last year I had a 0, or 2 years ago, I had a 0, a nose, and my next lineman was a defensive end who was supposed to be a 4-eye, but he's playing inside of a wing that's outside of a tight end, that's outside of a tackle over. So, I mean, that's a really, really big set of gaps. That's a lot of gaps that we're not filling. Of course, we got to coach them up, make them better at that. But it's hard. It's hard. Kenny talked about either putting in a whole new coverage. How do you modify your front? You've played in odd spacing all year long, and now you're trying to play in even spacing, or however you're going to do it. Try to tell a defensive end to go box, right? And now he's trying to get outside of this double frame, and C gap, B gap's empty, right? So there's just a lot going on when you really pinpoint focus on that the tight end wing especially. Man, that's a booger to try to defend. I also like it because we can get an extra, but I'm going to air quote here, lineman in the game, right? You got that tight end who probably should have been playing tackle. He's your sixth, seventh best offensive lineman, and now he's just wearing an eligible number jersey. Well, you can get him in the game here, and now we're just hitting our gap scheme. We're hitting our zone scheme, whatever it is you're wanting to run, and we'll talk about that more in that next section. But I basically have my sixth lineman on the field, but you have to treat him as if he's going to go downfield and catch a pass, because if you don't, well, I'm hoping he's got good enough hands that I can capitalize on that, right? As soon as you disregard the fact that he is still eligible, then we're going to make you pay for that. So I think it's a great way to. You guys have covered it great. Just conflict players, putting that whole side of the defense in conflict. Who fits where? If you're gap exchanging, who you gap exchanging with? Because there's a lot more gaps out there, right? So I think it's a great way to just confuse. Shoot, DCs, honestly. I mean, then if they're confused, what are their kids going to be doing? So that's a really good deal. We'll jump into part 3 here, gents, and it's just kind of how can we incorporate this formation of this mindset and what we're already doing in football. Not everybody's running this stuff. Kenny, this is you talked about before. You used to be, you weren't always the gun tee guy, right? You were a different scheme, and so you brought it in, and you at some point transformed over to this. So we'll start with you again here, Kenny. Just if somebody's running, maybe their zone team, and they run 10 personnel, how do they install some of this? 4-man surface stuff, unbalanced, and that's the playbook they're given.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways you can do it. I mean, I think you can decide, hey, we're going to personnel this, which is what when you watch college football or NFL football, that's what they do. They take out a receiver and they bring in, like you mentioned, maybe it's a 6th lineman or whatever it might be, and then they're going to run their same stuff. Like that kid's probably even the same position. Like you took out a Y who was a flex receiver and brought in a Y who put his hand in the ground. So you can personnel, and again, like Coach mentioned, run the same plays you're already running, but from different personnel groups. Or you can try to use the kids you already have and mess with their splits. Like you may say, we want to be 10 personnel because that's what we do. So we're going to go ahead instead on these. I want you to run squeeze. We used to call it squeeze. Bring them all in. And now we're going to run the same stuff, but now we've created these additional gaps that we're using. And I like how Coach brought it up. And I think if you decide that you're going to dive into this world, if this becomes something you're going to spend time in, shifting to it and getting to it through motion creates even more problems. And it's not that big an install for the offense. So once you kind of have it in, it's not much to say, when we run this, we're going to shift or trade or motion to it. It doesn't take much. Take that running back and do this, and boom, he's at a wing. And you're running whatever you were wanting to run anyway. The big thing, I'm glad Coach brought it up, is you're going to run the same plays. Like, I think that's the key, is don't just get into this package and now you're running different stuff. You need to be able to run your same stuff using splits to your advantage. We can run our offense, the offense I run, and I really believe you could run out of 10 personnel. You just would have to mess with splits and ask some kids to do some things that would be, probably uncomfortable, but you could do it. I think a lot of times as coaches, we just kind of get stagnant with our splits without understanding how much your splits affect people. I mean, I studied a lot of Texas slot T the last 2 or 3 years. They're basically running the wing T. Don't tell them this, but they're shifting our guy out and they're running a really fast huddle. Like, that's pretty much the only difference when you really boil it down. Now, there's some other stuff they're doing, but pretty close to wing T, except we're running a nasty split. And man, when you dive into how many problems that creates, I mean, it really does. And just taking a tight end and moving him 3 yards over and putting his hand in the ground creates a lot more problems than we think. And then once you understand how the defense is adjusting, you can now, okay, what if we did that? But we also put 2 other guys there in a bunch. And so I think, to me, whatever offense you're running, when we were spread, we would run like wide splits. I think that's another way. I mean, you can use splits in lots of ways to get where you want to get. We're talking today about, 4-person, overload personnel groups. But basically, in my mind, I think that's so underutilized. Like, coaches whatever offense you want to run inside zone, run it with tight end wing. You want to run inside zone, run it at 10 personnel, but bring a guy in orbit motion, and now you set off all other stuff. So those condensed formations that give you the ability to run a lot of different looks, and you can do it out of 10 personnel, 11, 12, whatever number you want to use. You can do all the same stuff as long as you're running the same play. You start sticking in new plays and it starts mucking it up a little bit, because anytime you stick a new play in now, you got to teach it to all those formations. So it takes time.
Coach Cooley, same thing to you, man. Somebody's wanting to run some of these formations, and I mean, you kind of sound like you're doing it, right? You base out of 11P, so when you put an extra guy down there, how are you doing that, and how can other people do that?
Yeah, so I mean, we'll have personnel packages. We put another tight end in, but if you wanted to get an unbalanced look in that 11P look, I mean, I'll call it over. You send a receiver over to be ineligible, and you have the H back on the other side. And if you do it pretty quick, we're no huddle, right? So we get on the ball, we make an overcall. They get over there, looks like a trips look, right? They're going to line up like it's trips, and they're going to play their trips responsibilities. And if on the back side, on the H back side, you run power or whatever you want to run, you get numbers that way as well. That's kind of one way we do it. Obviously, Coach did a good job about talking about splits. We played wide this past year a lot, but we call it flex. We'll bring them in the squeeze look like he was talking about. We'll bring them in. We'll mess with their splits a lot to create that kind of look. We'll stack them up out there, make it look goofy kind of sometimes, and then we'll motion it out. And I would suggest, and I didn't do this until this past year, I said we're no huddle. I would suggest everyone get a sugar huddle of some kind, because we'll change personnels and we'll call sugar. And then we give them the formation, and they hit the. I mean, whenever they break the huddle, they get down fast and they snap it within its own first sound. And you line up however you want to. So you can put your tight end nub on the backside and then go unbalanced. You can do whatever formations you want to do. Put the receivers where you want. One thing that how I call plays in is I kind of do my formations different. It's kind of weird in my head, but I get the perimeter set first, and then the box formation second when we signal it in. So I get the receivers and everybody on the perimeter set where I want them first, and then I'll move whoever in the box to wherever I need them. So we'll be moving it's kind of weird, but it works for us. And whenever you sugar huddle, you just give them the formation and they hit it really fast. I mean, it's pretty tough to defend. They always line up the same. They just line up in their base every time. So you can get them if you're on the right hash and you want formation in the boundary, they're going to be in their base. They're not going to have time to move. you hit that hash. I mean, if you got some decent O-line guys and good running back, you can get some yards that way. So we do a lot of different things like that. But I mean, that's just kind of what's worked for us.
We ran a lot of sugar huddle for especially our heavy set this year, which was essentially what we're talking about, just to both sides. Kicked our quarterback out, got him off the field, and just put a bunch of dudes out there just want to go hit people. Matter of fact, our 2 inside linebackers, who were absolute monsters, we just let them run lead blocker. That's all they did, was just scream through the hole and find people to hit. So, and I called Kenny and told him his heavy needed a sugar huddle. I said, hey, man, you need to think about getting a sugar huddle with this. I think it'll help. But so it is a weapon of its own. Kenny, I like that you kind of talked about using splits to create this because, not all of us necessarily have another tight end to put in the game or even that 6th O lineman. But we did something really goofy this year. In fact, it made it to the internet, and it was an illegal formation when we called it, just because one kid lined up in the wrong place. But we put all 11 kids, 10 kids, and the quarterback was sitting back in his spot, 10 kids from sideline to sideline, evenly spaced. And like on the surface, that's goofy, right? Like it's the old Mike Leach, like, look at this ridiculous thing I can make you line up to. But number one, the defense didn't know what to do, right? We run bubble or something outside. The kids didn't know where to be. I think it was illegal because our linemen just kind of forgot to get on the line of scrimmage. They were just used to being where their toes are instead of where their hands are. But the ref didn't throw the flag, so it counted. We don't care. We're not going to tell anybody. Well, we created that same thing. It was like my linemen were dadgum 20 yards wide just with the 5 of them. And how's a defensive line supposed to line up to that, right? If you run 4 eyes, he's like, Coach, I am 15 yards from the football or more, right? And he's trying to run a 4 eye. So splits, yes, I think that can get you there too in ways that I hadn't really thought about until Kenny mentioned it just a bit ago. All my screens went black. I hope that y'all are still hearing me. Anyway, so yeah, dealing with splits is a great way to do it. And then, we talk about what are we looking to use it for? How can I utilize this? Well, one of our best plays this year was an outside zone play to the backside of a tackle over formations. You talk about going unbalanced, and you draw a lot of attention to that front side. And they often will overshift. And so you can open up that backside, especially if you get a quarterback in the run game. So now you can, Kenny, you mentioned it earlier with getting, just motion a running back out. Well, if you're already got a tight end wing and now you motion a running back out there and run away from it, man, you can really mess with numbers real fast. So once again, just finding that leverage, space, numbers, and just taking advantage of it. All right, so avoiding some technical difficulties here. This is what travel internet gets you, guys. It gets you a podcast that's choppy sometimes and hilariously recorded. So, Coach Simpson, why don't you jump in here to what not to do as a coach?
I think we've been kind of hammering this home. We could have let the guests do this one today, but I put down here, use formations, like use splits, use personnel groups, use formations, use trades, use shifts. All that stuff is cheap. Like it doesn't mean it doesn't matter. It's just an easy install. It's really, really easy. Don't come up with 1,000 new plays. Like that's where you start to get in trouble as an offensive coordinator. And right now we're at the high point of Twitter, Facebook, Glazier, name it, where there's all this really good stuff floating out there. Those guys, there's those dudes that write those books, like 121 plays. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's probably a great book. Do not try to put all those in. Like go pick 1 or 2 and then use these formations to kind of help that stuff work. Just from experience, if you put in a ton of plays, it's probably not going to go very well. But if you put in a few plays, but 1,000 ways to protect it, tags, formations, personnel groups, whatever, you're probably going to have a much better chance of being successful long term.
So I got to ask Kenny, since we're here and this episode's a little bit shorter anyway, you start talking about these plays, 121 plays and all that stuff. Number one, I don't know if there's 121 plays in football, right, without tags and all that stuff. So how much of this are we really just want to go out and install a concept? Can we just teach gap scheme as a concept and then, like you said, run it out of 1,000 formations because I don't got to keep
I think
teaching the fundamentals over and over. It's a concept, block down, kick out, run in between.
Somewhat. I mean, everything's a little different. It's like basketball. There's just so many sets you can run, and like you said, they're limited. But off of each set, there's 3 or 4 different wrinkles you can get. I think in football is a little more structured than basketball, so there's a little bit. I could see where you could say, yeah, there are more plays because, you may call out go and then out curl, or do you teach it conceptually where you run the out and the top receiver reads it? I mean, so it just depends on how you're teaching and trusting, and we are dealing with, IEPs, and we are dealing with special ed, and we are dealing with, at least I am in public schools. So sometimes you may have to put in 3 plays because your kids aren't quite at the level where they might be able to read it. So I do think there's probably a place where you could say, yeah, there are more plays out there. Conceptually, teaching is the best way to do it, but we don't always have the kids that are maybe able to do that. We're like kind of alluding like running choice routes. We might only have 2 or 3 kids that really can actually do that successfully. It's a great concept, but I might not be able to do it with all my kids one year. So I do think there's definitely room in football where you probably are going to run more plays, at least early on. But I think that there is most definitely a point of diminishing returns. The more plays you add in, it starts to get to where it's not good. And generally for me, that rules around 3. You get above 3, it's going to be really difficult to be really good at what you're doing.
Love it. Great advice. Well, Coach Cooley, I brought you in on a busted episode. I'm so sorry about all the technical difficulties, but that's the way podcasting is. You've been a great guest, man. We're super glad to have you on the show. And we will definitely have you back on. So make sure you reach out. We get that next episode scheduled. I go home from Kansas. I blame all this on the state of Kansas, by the way. There's nothing here but wind, and it snowed for like a week straight. There's nothing else here. Prairie dogs, I guess, probably live here. So we'll get you on when I'm back at the house, and we'll have a proper episode of. But man, we do appreciate you coming on tonight and talking a little bit of football with us. Real quick, I know you talked about your team's got a Twitter and stuff. Pitch all of that, man. Tell us where we can go out and find your team and watch your offensive play highlights this year.
Yeah, man. We're at Hickson Football, at Hickson Football on Twitter. If you want to follow me, I'm at Coach Cooley _SC. So that's just kind of my deal. And, I'm always retweeting our team stuff too. So, I mean, it's all tied in together. So just either one of those will work, or both would work. And I appreciate you guys for having me on, man.
Shoot, yeah, dude. We'll definitely bring you back on. We like talking offense on this podcast. We dip into the defense every once in a while, but we like to tear up them offensive, tear down the offensive plays. So it's absolutely good stuff. Real quick before we jump out here, we'll talk one more time about our sponsors. Ace Sports, guys. It is the time of year for Ace Sports. I think Kenny and I are going to be doing some traveling. We're going to Kentucky. We're going to Texas high school, whatever their big symposium is down there for their coaches association. So come find us, but we'll be visiting there for Ace Sports. It's the hack. It's the cheat code in fundraising. You need a big ticket item thing. This is a big ticket item fundraiser. So go out and match your fundraising to the things that you always want. New locker room, new coaches' offices, turf, new stadium, whatever the big thing is that you need in your life. Go out and talk to Ryan or Mark over at Ace Sports and see if they can't get in, talk to your admin, and show you the path to get into that. It is a cheat code. I can't say that enough times. Kenny, one more time, tell us about your I know we got the 2 clinics coming up. Starting the first weekend, second weekend of April, we'll be in Boston and Milwaukee. And then your Special Teams Academy, right? Special Teams Coordinator Academy?
Special Teams Academy, yeah. Playmaker's Guide book has come out. Or Play Caller's Guide book, Play Caller's Guide book has come out. And then I'm working on Team Themes Volume 5. I'm working on a Volume 2 to the 3-4 Swarm. That should all be, I'm hoping to get out before the season. Realistically, everything else is probably going to be put on the back burner till the season's up. But I've got other books we're working on. Daniel and I are working on one. I've got another book I'm working on. So there's several that are kind of in the works. But honestly, those are probably not going to be coming out until after the season.
There you go. Love it. Social media wise, Coach, you told us where your Twitter is. Is there? If somebody wanted to email you, where could they email you at to ask questions?
Yeah, just Coach Shawn Cooley at gmail.com. That's it. Coach Shawn Cooley at gmail.com.
That's the one right there. That's the good one.
Yeah.
Just coach
Yeah.
and my name at gmail.com. Gmail's got it made.
Heck yeah.
For me, you
Yep.
can find me on Twitter /X at Coach Chambo OK. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting at gmail.com. See, mine's real long and crazy. Yours is better. And then also you can jump over to the website. And then I've got a Patreon, patreon.com /Chamberlain Football Consulting. That's where I'm just trying to help coaches really just give love back to their kids. If you're needing to make some graphics or highlight reels or soup up a website, whatever it is you're needing to do, I've probably got a tier over there for you. And if you don't, hit me up on DMs on Twitter or email me, and I'll make you your own tier. I don't care. We'll work with you in what you've got available. And then I got the YouTube where I'm just teaching my wife how to all the things football. So Back to the Basic series is going over there right now, where we're talking. That might be the place to send your brand new assistant football coach. Just send him over to Coach Chambo's YouTube and let him learn like my wife is. And Kenny, where are you at, good sir?
All things FB Coach Simpson. So website's fbcoachsimpson.com. Email is fbcoachsimpson@gmail.com. And Twitter is just FB Coach Simpson.
Perfect. Podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod. Excuse me. I want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. We'll hope you join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing. Guys, I'm all over the place tonight. To the shows, you'll always know when the new episodes are out. It's about time to start leaving reviews. If you're listening on wherever you go to get your podcast, if you're on Apple Podcast, you're on Spotify, we'd love to have a 5-star review to keep spreading the word. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.